The Supreme Court of Kenya, under the leadership of Chief Justice Madam Martha Koome, is an institution under scrutiny. Of late, it has become the subject of discussion. You know, the Supreme Court is the apex court in our country, and it was formed when Kenyans lost faith in the former courts as far as the presidential cases after election were concerned. But the Supreme Court has been bombarded by very many other cases that involves the executive. William Ruto got into power and he had a new lineup of policies, taking a new paradigm shift from what Uhuru initiated and sustained. And those policies have not resonated well with the Kenyans, and most of them have ended up in court. At the starting point is always the High Court or the Lands and Environment Court, like in the case of GMO. Now, notably, there is this tendency that William Ruto has always won all those cases. If they are overturned at the High Court level, the Attorney General and government lawyers would appeal, and the appellate court, William Ruto has had his way. If Ruto does not get his way, then he moves to the Supreme Court, and he has never lost any case. You could talk of the housing levy, you could talk of the SHIF, which is from SHIF and SHA and all that. You could talk of the Finance Bill 2023 and Finance Bill 2024, the GMO and everything. And this tendency of ruling in favor of William Ruto has caught the attention of many lawyers. And they're not massaging William Ruto, they're not massaging the Supreme Court. They are calling things the way they are. Now, someone is explaining, because there's a video that I want us to watch, that Supreme Court, being the apex court, should make rulings considering the public interest. They need to look at the mood and rule in favor of what the public wants. But they have ruled taking account of what now has been choreographed as national interest. And there is a big debate between public interest and national interest, because in the Kenyan scenario, the government has turned national interest to be the interest of the executive, the interest of William Ruto and his government, turning away the thoughts, feelings, and sentiments of the people of Kenya. That has also been the case whenever the government is introducing something new. They do not consider the opinions of people. Even if people go for public participation as is entrenched in the Constitution, they do it as a mere formality. Not only that, lawyers are saying that there seems to be somebody somewhere who is writing rulings on behalf of the Supreme Court, because they feel that some of those rulings, if the Supreme Court were to sit down and collectively put their brains together, they would not make such rulings. And therefore, they feel someone somewhere, a spy from State House, Ruto's masked face, could be in the Supreme Court, monitoring, scrutinizing what they're doing, and directing them on what to do, writing verdicts for them, and giving Madam Koome to read. Kindly take a look.
Look, the Supreme Court is the apex court. Over and above upholding the rule of law, it has an obligation to read the public mood and see what policy is conducive and good for the people of Kenya. It must read the ground. It must listen to the ground. You want to tell me the High Court was wrong? The Court of Appeal was wrong? The Supreme Court was right? Yes, as Madam Speaker, Madam says here, a judge is bound to make a mistake. But you see, of late, the Supreme Court has been very consistent and unanimous in their mistakes, catastrophic mistakes. And when there is that perception that the Supreme Court has become pliable, it has become manipulable, then the people lose confidence in the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And what you said is just the best example. We had Azimio torpedoing this finance bill with good, viable reasons. Why have they all of a sudden taken a different position and are supporting a decision by the Supreme Court, which I can tell you without any fear of contradiction? And I listen to the ground a lot. I was in Nakuru today. People are so much annoyed with this Supreme Court. That decision was wrong. And then it begs the question, who writes these decisions? Are they really written by these old men and women? I'm very doubtful. They're not written by them. An old man and an old woman who is conscious of the interests of the people of Kenya will not write these things.
Who would write them?
That is the question. Who writes these things?
DCJ, you sat in the court.
This is not the first time the Supreme Court is coming under scrutiny. I remember way back in 2013 when they were making their first ruling on the presidential case between Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta. You could see that there was pressure, palpable tension. And when the former Chief Justice William Mutunga, together with his team, went to give a ruling, it was a ruling that took less than 5 minutes. And they told us that we will give you the full ruling in our website. And people were like, are they themselves the ones who wrote the verdict? Many people were associating that verdict with the former Attorney General Githu Muigai, because when he went to the courts, he requested to be an amicus curiae, to be a friend of the courts. Immediately he spoke, he said that we should check whether there were anomalies. And if there are little anomalies, they don't warrant the nullification of that whole election. And that is what they used, that there were some anomalies, very minute, very little and trivial, that did not warrant the nullification of the 2013 election. Then come 2017, such a thing happened. But in 2022, it was even worse, because Madam Martha Koome used non-judicial terms, hot air, wild goose chase. I mean, very pathetic. And Kenyans concluded that the Supreme Court is just a body. Those judges are just stooges there. There is someone else who writes those verdicts and give them to read. Because I remember James Orengo was saying that under natural justice, a judge who is presiding over a very sensitive case such as that of the presidential election, knowing very well that it is very emotive and it can lead to protest and even burning the country like it happened in 2007, should ensure that she or he uses judicial terms so much that both the parties will go home, the winner and the loser will go home, feeling satisfied that we were heard and the ruling is satisfactory. But when you start, thrashing, a case that has been brought and the person has lost, and you tell them wild goose chase, I mean, it's pathetic. And so someone was saying that someone else, not the members of the Supreme Court, have been there and they are writing those verdicts, and that someone is just a Kenyan in this country. Recently, Madam Martha Koome told us that she cannot allow anyone to influence her. For you to see, media asking the Chief Justice whether there is an influence within, it seems people can feel, Kenyans are not imbeciles. We can see. And Madam Martha Koome was saying that according to the Constitution, there isn't anyone who can influence their opinions. And she was telling that if someone comes to try and influence, that she would refer them to the Constitution, because the Constitution does not allow anyone to influence their judgment. The other time, William Ruto threatened the courts. People expected Madam Martha Koome to stand firm And when William Ruto called her for a meeting, many people told her, do not go to State House. Because when you are there, that is not a neutral ground. You could be going there and William Ruto will start reading a riot act. So they had their own meeting. Then we were told that they had buried the hatchet and they were beginning afresh and all that. This kind of dalliance between William Ruto and Madam Martha Koome is worrying people. And people really feel that Madam Koome has never come out very strongly and boldly to tell William Ruto that you cannot threaten my court. Madam Martha Koome has never understood that they need to exercise their autonomy. But from where I sit, I also understand that that is the constitution written well, but they also have a life to live. In an environment where the executive arm of the government is the one that controls the police, controls the military, sometimes they can be intimidated. Those are things that happen in Africa. And so we could really make a lot of noise. But if you are not brave enough, you cannot stand against the executive. The only one person who has done is David Maraga. And I always think that that man is made of a heart of a lion. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we can easily conclude that there is a spying on the Supreme Court, spying on every decision that they make. And he sits among them and tell them, this is how you should write this verdict, or he or she writes it for them and they read. Number two, there seems to be intimidation, because when you sit as a people, as a body, you are mandated to make rulings and someone writes it for you. If that is true, then it means they are being intimidated and threatened because they can't exercise now their authority. Or in the absence of threats and intimidation, there could be a very strong bond between them dating back from 2013. Knowing very well that they have done this together, it is easy for them to make rulings, because if they messed in 2013, messed in 2017, messed in 2022, then it's very easy for them to continue. They can easily perpetuate that because they are birds of the same feathers now. And if either or both is not happening, then we can easily conclude that maybe they take bribes. These are not my words. If you've been following Ahmed Nasir, you realize that the lawyer has kept on crying foul and complaining about the corruption in the judiciary. He calls it juris pesa. And he's been saying, sometimes he even alleges that in 2022, they were given certain amount of money. And so it is very pathetic that in a situation where we have a parliament that does not listen to us, a parliament that does not consult us, our members of parliament always vote when they consider the dictates of the president. Our only hope would be in the courts. But even in the courts, we are now realizing that William Ruto has never lost any case. And now we are being told that they could be bribed, they could be threatened, or they could just be having a strong bond between them, making rulings that gives Ruto his ways. And even to make it saddest is that someone could be writing those verdicts for them. Some state spy, some Ruto's lawyer. And by the way, if we were to just guess, what names would you give if you are given to start imagining who could Ruto be sending to write, verdicts for the Supreme Court? Don't write the name here. That's just a food for thought, because you cannot defend that in a court of justice. Ladies and gentlemen, we really need to scrutinize that spy, because those are not my words, but one of the very lawyers who has been, by the way, Nelson Havi has been a Law Society of Kenya president. So he knows what he's talking about. A senior lawyer, and he's been a friend of William Samoei Ruto. There is a problem.